really easily, and you can tell them in a way that connects with people and that influences people really, really well. But first, before I do that, I'm going to tell you a story. And I need everyone's permission here. Because I'm going to get really intimate, and I'm going to reveal things about myself. And I need you all to promise me that you're not going to judge me or think any less of me after we leave this room. What happens in Toastmasters stays in Toastmasters. Have I got that?
Yeah!
No. All right, guys, I know I got it from you. Okay, ladies, now, I really need this from you. No one's going to judge me or think any less of me, and they're going to appreciate the nuggets that come out of this lesson. Ladies, have I got your permission to move forward with this speech? Sure.
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you. So, I'm an engineer by nature. I grew up as an engineer. I went to school for engineering. I'm a very linear thinking. I'm an introvert by nature. Most people will not understand or agree with that. I'm actually an introvert. And when I converse, it's like point A to point B, right? Come on, get to the point. Let's go. Don't need a story. Just tell me how to get from point A to point B. Now, how do you guys think I learned storytelling? Is anybody here in sales? Anybody here? Like
all of us. Yeah. We all are. We sell ourselves every day.
That's not how I learned. How many of you in Toastmasters? You guys have done storytelling in Toastmasters and you learned the importance of organizing your story. Anybody ever learned that in Toastmasters? Yeah, sure. That's not how I learned. How many of you knew that guy in college or high school who really wasn't that good looking or wasn't really that great? But he walks into a room, and after 5 minutes, women are throwing themselves at him, and he does these amazing things with women, and you're like, how did he do that? What is the magic behind this guy's essence? We all know that guy. Well, as an engineer, I decided in my life, I've got to figure out how he does that. I'm going to backwards engineer that guy and figure it out. And that's how I learned the importance of storytelling. Now, why is this important? The story's just begun. It's not. So I started down this path of trying to backwards engineer that guy, and I was not that. And I'm an okay-looking guy, right? I'm like an average-looking guy. Was never really good with the ladies. Was always really, really bad with the ladies. And so I set out to learn this, and I got pretty good. I'm a Gemini, so I'm naturally pretty shallow.
Oh my God!
I own it. Okay? I own it. And so I got really good at the introduction part, being, cocky and funny and all that good stuff. But I wasn't able to move things through the sales pipeline, for lack of a better word, like I wanted to. I wasn't getting consistency in the close. And I couldn't figure out why. And I went to a mentor of mine and said, shallowness is okay. It's good at starting things out. Women need that connection. Women need that connection before. So I didn't need that next step. I said, I'm a shallow guy. I can't do that. He said, how do you connect through storytelling? You've got to show the depth in you. You've got to reveal that before women will connect. So I spent months organizing my deep stories. I spent months coming up with these stories in my life that would allow me to connect and move things to that next level. And I remember I was at a club. Many people remember where they were when JFK got shot. Many people remember where they were when the Challenger blew up. Many people remember where they were when the World Trade Center got bombed. remember where I was in vivid detail when I realized the power of a strong, organized, well-plotted out story. So I was in the club and I'd gone through the whole thing, you know, what do you do for a living? And, you know, I told her I was an ass model, okay? No, really, what do you do? And I said, I work at Taco Bell. You know, I put the meat in the taco things, and so after a while, I'm like, oh man, I gotta connect. This is over. It's time to go deep. Let's go outside for some fresh air and go outside. I remember I went into this, you know, what do I really do? Well, I really come from not a lot of money. I was very poor growing up, and my parents worked so much, and they worked so hard for me, and I was a latchkey kid, and I stayed home, and I never really had anybody there, but I remember everything was broken around my end, blah, 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 blah. So, and it's all true, but it was all very carefully orchestrated. It was organized in how I became an entrepreneur, and why I worked so hard, and why I strived to make money and to do things to make money for my parents and to take care of my family and friends. And after 10 minutes, I looked up, and her eyes were this big. And that was the moment that I realized when she went into her story about her as a little girl and all that stuff, I was like, holy, I could have gold mine I don't have time to go into the rest, but that was when I realized the importance and the power of storytelling. It changed my life, literally. That's no joke. So an organized, compelling stories will allow you to influence people. It will allow you to teach people. And it will allow you to be memorable. In organized, compelling stories, this will allow you to make more money, have more time, have more freedom, and have more impact. We all know that guy who you ask him, so, how was your night? And I'll be like, great, had some dinner and went to sleep. But this other guy, like, you know, wow, blah, 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 and he talks for 10 minutes. And it's this interesting story that he makes, and now you're like best friends, and you want to hear more about what he has to say. That's the power of storytelling. Those guys make more money, those guys and girls make more money, and they have more influence. So, the only thing that people will remember about your training presentation, or the facts that you give them, or the facts that you try to give them, is the story that you tell around that. No one's going to remember what I tell you today. You're only going to remember that story that I just went into for 10 minutes. That's the bottom line. For better or for worse. How did I discover this process that I'm going to show you on how to organize your speech to tell better stories? Well, I was the president of a Toastmasters club in the MBA program at Arizona State University, and it was a small growing program. And what happened was that nobody would show up, the speakers wouldn't show up, and I had to give the speeches. So I had to learn really quickly how to organize a speech, how to make out a speech, how to make it interesting, how to hit all the points, and how to do it really, really quickly. And if you do enough of those, you get pretty good really fast, and you learn what works and what doesn't work. And you cut away the fat, and you use what works. So, I do what is called mind mapping. And I'm going to run through with you here exactly what mind mapping is, how to do it, and how it will make your life interesting. Now, why mind mapping? Because the human brain works in a spatial format. It doesn't work in a linear format. That's not how our brains operate. It's circular. Our brain works in colors. It works in shapes. It works in directions. And it works in pictures. Not in little symbols that go across a page and go down for 5 pages. Unless you're Ravi
Budrick,
then he can memorize like an entire encyclopedia and rehearse it word for word somehow. It's unbelievable. So, why mind mapping? Well, there are studies that show that mind mapping has given medical students a 10% increase in their memory. children recall words with a 32% more accuracy, and our minds remember things in groups of 7. So many of you remember my first speech called My Friggin' Totem Animals, the first speech I ever gave here. And this is the mind map that I used to make that speech. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. So everything is in less than 7, and they're organized in a circle in a way that chunks things down in 7s or less than 7s, makes it very easy to memorize. This was my speech. I was old school. I've gotten lazy over time. But that's an example of what that looks like. Now I'm going to break that down for you here really quickly.
By the time you make it, you can have it memorized.
What I do is I start with the conclusion, then I go to the intro, and I put 3 points across each side, and I start to fill each in, starting with the intro and then the conclusion. So this is how this speech actually started to organize. I tried with the conclusion, started with the quote, and oh, I got to put the tools in here that I use. So I put that up there, and I just got that out of my mind. Then I built the conclusion out, or I started to build the conclusion out. That's the most important part of any speech, is the conclusion. Now I don't even know what I'm talking about yet. And then I wrote out the intro, and I haven't even got the meat of my speech yet. Many of you are wondering, is there any point to the speech? So as you can see, I've got a very long intro here, and I've got a little bit of meat here, and a little bit of meat here, and a little bit of meat here, and then a conclusion. So that's how I actually wrote it out. Here's the sequence: conclusion, introduction, then you start to pepper in, the first point, the second point, the third point. Then you go back and fill in the story steroids. And what those are is go back and pepper in humor. You got to pepper in sadness. Which is most of my life, actually. You actually, where are you going to use gestures? Put those in your speech. You stick those in the diagram. Is there a low point in your speech? We all know the low point of my speech. And a time warp. Can you move into the future? Can you move into the past? It's really difficult to time warp. So can you throw that into your speech? And can you throw in any universal theme, like an us versus them? Can you throw in a reluctant hero theme, or can you throw in a hometown boy makes good? Everybody loves those themes. Don't have time to go into this right now. You can pepper those in. They are story steroids. So the tools that I use here. If you use a map, you can use for the mind map, and you use MindNode Pro. It's fantastic. It's like $5 or something like that. Microsoft PowerPoint works well. It's a little bit more difficult to use that. Or you can just use colored pens. If you're not the Desiderated, you can use crayons. That'd be funnier if he was here. If you use an iPad, you can use something called iThoughts. That's an HD. It's a very good program for using an iPad. And if you're using Windows, get a Mac. For the quotes at the conclusion, I love brainyquote.com. You can find quotes on anything there, which is where I found the quote here. So now's the point where I tell you what I told you. The point of this speech wasn't to show how to pick up women. I would have talked about the cube if I was going to do that, and that's far too diabolical. It's like a nuclear bomb of women's psychology, and I'm saving that for my son when he turns 18. But your stories will determine your destiny. Your ability to tell stories will determine how successful you are in life, how you influence people in life, and how you organize those stories is going to be important for how you influence people. And you can use a linear approach, or if you're, and that works for some people like Robbie, who many of you know, but if you're a creative type and you have a hard time just straight memorizing, use a spatial format, because people are expecting linear. Use a spatial format, and it makes things way more creative and way more interesting. Because Abraham Lincoln, ladies and gentlemen, 1 second. 6 hours to chop down a tree? He would spend 4 hours chopping his axe. Well, Abraham Lincoln got shot in the back of the head after the bloodiest war in history in a crowded theater. And how does that happen? Where are his bodyguards? What's wrong with this guy? He spent all his time sharpening a stupid axe. Look, it's 2014. We're in the modern era. You spend your time sharpening an axe, get a chainsaw, spend half an hour cutting down the tree, and spend 5.5 hours doing what you want, getting better bodyguards, planning your security out, doing anything but getting shot in the back of the head. Life is too short. Tell better stories. Tell more effective stories. Take the time to learn how to do it, to make them more impactful, and your life will be better. The mind map is your chainsaw, ladies and gentlemen. So start using it for your storytelling today.